Welcome everybody. Hello, thank you to everybody that's been adding their names and letting us know where they're coming from, where they're joining us from, today. Hello, Samantha. Hi, Carol, Marietta, Joyce. It's so good to see you all here. Thank you so much for joining. We've got lots and lots of people joining at the moment, so I'm just delaying a few minutes in order to let everybody through because not everybody's as prompt as Antonia. Congratulations, you were the first person to arrive this afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Women's Empowerment Through Tourism, an event brought to you by Kiwano Tourism. Thank you so much for your precious time and energy. You've made a really great choice for your business, your team, your clients, partners, and for the future of tourism by choosing to be here today. So for those who don't know me, my name's Rebecca Woolford. I'm co-founder of Kiwano Tourism, which is an online community designed for travel professionals who are ready to reimagine tourism for people, nature, and the planet. I have the pleasure of being your host in these inclusive educational events. And if you haven't seen any of our previous events, it's best to join our community over on Kiwano Tourism to ensure you don't miss another one. For those who, like I said, don't know me, I'm an online educator, writer, filmmaker. I've worked with some of the world's best sustainable hotels, National Geographic unique lodges, and have supported over 300 travel agencies evolve their sustainability journey. Whether you're a travel agent, a small business owner, you're head of commercial or product in a much bigger business, wherever you are joining us from today, I guarantee you'll learn something new. There is an incredible amount of insight and information sharing we need to get through today. So let's begin. Before we continue, though, let's just talk about what we are here to do. We're here to inspire and educate you. We're here to give you some clarity on why gender equality, climate change, and sustainable tourism are closely intertwined. We're going to leave you feeling inspired by case studies and stories. We're going to leave you feeling better armed and equipped with actionable steps. And we're coming together ultimately as an industry, as a community to create meaningful change. A special thank you before I go on to Exodus Adventure Travel, who make these inclusive events possible. So thank you to them. Before we hear from an international keynote speaker, I'd like to take just a few minutes, if I may, to share why this topic deserves our attention. The majority of folks working in travel and tourism, if you didn't know this, some of you may know the facts, but the majority of people working in travel and tourism are women, yet most of them are concentrated in low skills and low paid positions. It's only around 20% of leadership and executive level roles in tourism are actually filled by women, 20%. And this year's International Women's Day theme was Inspire Inclusion, reminding us of the work there is still to be done around breaking down barriers, challenging stereotypes, and creating environments where all women are valued and respected. Now, don't get me wrong, there's been some incredible progress. In Botswana, we saw the first all-female safari guiding team in Africa. In Delhi, G Adventures and Planetera partnered with Women on Wheels, and the Italian NGO GRT launched an interactive map of tours and places to stay that benefit local women. But there's still plenty of work to be done. And when women have an equal voice in tourism and an equal share of its profits, only then can sustainable and regenerative tourism be within our reach. Now, talking of breaking down barriers and challenging stereotypes, this is the perfect segue to our next guest. Voted Woman of the Year in Nonprofit. Our next guest is listed in the top 100 women in social enterprise and is a UN Women UK delegate. I'm so excited I can't get my words out. Her impactful work has been celebrated worldwide, including by Sir David Attenborough. Holly Budge has seen firsthand the ripple effect of investing in women and how bringing gender equality into wildlife ranger workforce strengthens community and conservation efforts. Many of the female rangers Holly works with through her NGO, How Many Elephants, and World Female Ranger Week have overcome adversity, poverty, and marginalization. And I couldn't be more excited to bring her to you today. Thank you so much for being here, Holly. And like I said, I couldn't be more hyped and excited to pass this over to you today. So over to you.
So as an adventurer, an Everest summiteer, and the first woman to skydive Everest, I realised that using my adventures as a platform to talk about conservation issues was a really good thing to do. And through my adventures to date, I've raised over £500,000 for conservation. But I also realised that my adventures were attracting huge media attention. And this got me thinking, how can I harness the power of the global media for a greater good than me jumping out of an aeroplane or climbing a mountain? So I'm going to come back to that point later on in my talk. So a little background of how I got involved in conservation. 10 years ago, I went and studied for a master's in sustainable design. And I was actually studying a material called vegetable ivory, which is almost identical in colour and texture to elephant ivory. And that's what got me researching the African elephant crisis. And I was so horrified by the statistics of 96 elephants being poached each day for their ivory in Africa that I wanted to use my skills as a graphic designer to come up with a fresh awareness raising campaign. So I built this necklace that you're looking at. It's 96 elephants cut in vegetable ivory to show the daily poaching rate. And it's won 5 design awards so far. To accompany my necklace is my hard-hitting exhibition that travels around the world, showcasing 35,000 elephants on a wall to show the annual poaching rate. And the whole premise with my work is it's non-gruesome, it's non-gory, and it's non-political. I'm just visualizing the data. But what that's allowed me to do is to connect with many different audiences, including going into schools, working with young people, and also working with adults that don't want to engage with gruesome imagery, me being one of those. So that's the awareness side of my campaign. I'm now a UK registered charity, and we're very much focused on African elephants and female rangers. So that leads me on to the incredible Black Mambas, an all-female team based in South Africa. They are Africa's first all-female team. And these women, they're incredible. They patrol a different beat every day. They walk up to 20 kilometers a day, checking for holes in the fence line, monitoring the wildlife, and working very closely with the communities. And they're now 10 years old, and it's in the last 10 years their impact has been really significant. So bushmeat poaching in the area that they patrol, which is Oliphants West in Greater Kruger, has reduced by 89%. Poaching incursions have reduced by 62%, and snaring has dropped by 99%. So these are incredible feats forward for conservation. But I can tell you now, patrolling with female rangers on the front line makes climbing Everest look like child's play. So today I want to focus on empowered women paving the way in conservation and in tourism. So as I've said, I've worked with, supported and advocated female wildlife rangers for the past decade, and the female ranger movement is gaining rapid momentum globally, and for good reason. Female rangers are proving highly successful, not only patrolling on the front line, but in easing local tensions and strengthening relationships with communities using the power of conversation. So many of the female rangers that I work with now, they're now breadwinners. They own land, they've built houses, they've got access to better healthcare, they're getting an education, their children are in school. So the ripple out effect, especially with the Black Mambas, looking at the last 10 years, has been incredible to see. And UN research says that women invest up to 80% of their income back into their families. So female rangers, and certainly the ones I'm working with, are not only working on the front line, but they're educators, they're role models, and they are beacons of hope in their communities. But they're also changing the attitudes towards the role of women around the world. However, and this is a big however, less than 11% of the global wildlife ranger workforce is female, meaning an entire gender has been marginalized in conservation and climate action conversations. Investing in gender equality has far-reaching benefits for environmental conservation, poverty reduction, and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. So I've been fortunate enough, and it is a huge privilege to have spent so much time on the front line across Africa with all female and multiple mixed ranger teams, including with the Akashinga Rangers in Zimbabwe, who are fully armed with AK-47s, and they don't have any armed backup behind them. I've been out with the Big Life Rangers in Kenya, and also the Mara Elephant Project Rangers in Kenya, to mention a few. And I've seen firsthand how female rangers are impacting lives, protecting wildlife, uplifting communities, and empowering other women. So I just want to take a few minutes to shine a light on the impact of some of the very inspiring female rangers that I'm working with. So you're now looking at a picture of Karen. She works for the Mara Elephant Project in Kenya. And Karen went for ranger training when she was just 19. By the time she was 21, she was leading her team. And I just loved spending time with these guys. They're a mixed ranger team. Some of them are armed, some of them are unarmed. And there were men of around 40, 50 years old working beneath and under Karen's direction. And they just all seemed to have such respect for her. But when I got chatting to Karen and finding out what drives and motivates her to do this work, I realized that it came at quite a sacrifice too. And at the time, she had a 1-year-old daughter. And when she went home every 3 weeks or so, just for a week, she said her daughter didn't know that she was mummy. And she said that was really heartbreaking, to have to pretend to be the sister, you know, or whatever, the auntie, until the child gets older. And then pull another layer off that, she said, even if I wanted to go home and be a full-time mum, that option is no longer available to me either, because I'm now the breadwinner of the family. So the next, and also Karen was the recipient of my first World Female Ranger Award in 2021. So this is Bam. Bam is from Malaysia, and she single-handedly founded the Gibbon Conservation Society 10 years ago after meeting a confiscated infant gibbon. And despite her lack of knowledge, she volunteered to care for him and learn everything she could about gibbons. And eventually she encountered other distressed gibbons in need. And in response, she sold everything she owned and moved to a secluded place to provide a natural home for all these gibbons. But the more that she spoke out about gibbon ownership, she faced backlash, and some villagers even labelled her as a witch. But over the last decade, Bam has faced great adversity in her fight for the gibbons. But despite the hardship, she's built a really strong organisation. And she was the recipient of my World Female Ranger Resilience Award 2023. And my final case study for today is Panima Devi Barman from Assam in India. I love this lady. She was studying for a PhD. She was studying storks, who were known as ugly, filthy birds that fed on garbage piles. And the locals were cutting down the trees where these birds were nesting. And Panima stopped her PhD study because she said if she didn't, this bird would be extinct by the time she'd graduated. So she went to the villages and she started trying to educate them about the benefits of keeping this bird alive. Fast forward a few years, she's now got 10,000 women in what is called the Hagila Army. And these women protect this bird like their own children. And they have baby naming ceremonies. And you can see in this picture, Panima does all these festivities where the women all wear hats that they've made as a representation of the bird. So she has just become a huge icon through her amazing pioneering conservation efforts. And to be honest, I could sit here all day and talk about story after story because there's so many incredible women out there. But that's why I built World Female Ranger Week as a platform, because I was so inspired, as a platform for these ladies to be able to share their stories, and so that I could amplify their voices in the global media. So as I mentioned earlier, how can I harness the power of the global media for a greater good than me jumping out of an aeroplane? This is it. So last year we got over 500 million views around World Female Ranger Week, and we did live interviews on Sky News, BBC Woman's Hour, Times Radio, and all sorts of other big media platforms. And it was magical seeing the momentum build. And for a lot of these women, they'd never had their story told on this kind of platform. So and I'd just like to say on that point, I invite you all to take part this year in World Female Ranger Week. It's June 23rd to the 30th, and I have a very comprehensive resource pack with lots of social media tiles, text, videos, the whole lot. It's really simple to get involved, but it really helps to keep that spreading that message. So through my research, I've identified over 4,500 female rangers in 18 African countries and around about 5,500 globally. And many of these women, despite being on opposite sides of the planet, are facing similar challenges, such as ill-fitting equipment, workplace security issues, and a big one that I'm seeing all the time still is social stigma. So to conclude, my rangers are not my rangers. Rangers are the last line of defense in protecting wildlife, wild spaces, and in turn, your wildlife-based tourism businesses. The lack of tourist dollars through the pandemic led to many rangers losing their jobs or having significant salary cuts. And the knock-on effect of this was huge, as one ranger in Africa, for example, may support up to 16 family members. So throughout the pandemic and now, at How Many Elephants, we've been working really hard to keep the rangers operational. So sustainable tourism is a key conservation tool by providing vital revenue streams through park and guiding fees and accommodation to help support rangers and other conservation efforts. So I'm going to finish by saying by embracing a gender inclusive approach to conservation, communities, societies, and the world at large can harness the full potential of women as agents of change and champions of environmental sustainability. When women rise, the world rises with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Holly. That was just amazing. I've got goosebumps hearing those stories. There was so much you said there that I'd love to touch on there, but that bit where you just talked about spending time on the front line with these female rangers made Everest and climbing Everest seem like child's play.
Yeah, that puts it in perspective.
Awesome. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And Holly actually is an ambassador of Water to Go, Water to Go International. She's a great ambassador for them. And today they are actually bringing everybody here that's joined live something pretty cool. So I actually used Water to Go, which is this filtration inside the bottle on a trip that I came back from only last week from Spain, hiking in the Sierra Nevada. And it really was a bit of a lifesaver because we ran out of water when hiking and on the road trip. And we were able to put this bottle in any stream, any river. We were able to put it in a tap we found at the back of a petrol station. It didn't matter. We were able to get clean, fresh water that eliminated any nasties. So we didn't have to opt for that plastic water bottle that's sometimes so easy to say yes to when out on a trip. So these bottles are really, I absolutely love traveling with them in Spain. And we're bringing you 50% discount today, only for those that join here live. So I'm going to add that in the email after this. But these really are a great way to engage your clients in more conscious trips. And like I said, from my trip in Spain, they really made a big difference for me being able to say no to plastic water bottles and not being caught out at any point without water. So there's your unique code, Kiwano50 at checkout. Now we're moving from brave wildlife rangers to female mountain guides. Our next guest will be giving us an inspiring insight into a very special scholarship that's already paving the way to empower more women through tourism. Sustainability manager for Exodus Adventure Travels, Rochelle is an experienced senior manager in tourism and sustainability. She was once the VP of Research and Sustainability at the World Travel and Tourism Council, and today she co-chairs the UK group Travel by B Corp. Now, before we hear from Rochelle, we're going to play a short video about this incredible project.
I've genuinely been on the most ridiculous journey over the last 8 days. I've never climbed a mountain before, and I don't have any mountaineering experience. Kilimanjaro is a very, very high mountain. There's no getting away from that. And it's the people that help you get there, and the porters play such an intricate role in helping you along that journey. Women have come so far. 10 years ago, they really struggled to be accepted. And now there's this family environment. I think in some ways, my 8 days has replicated that women's journey. I had to show some of the skills that these women demonstrate every day, of this resilience to prove and gather respect that they truly deserve. Women who are unfortunately only 18% of the workforce that go up Kilimanjaro. When I first arrived and threw that 20-kilo bag on my head,
Eva, are you ready to go?
No, I think so. I didn't really realise what I'd let myself into. The relentless nature of this role as a porter to get kit up Kilimanjaro needs a lot of respect because it's due it.
It's not that comfortable on your head, let's just put it that way.
You can see the campsite in the distance. It's actually the most demoralising thing, because no matter how far you walk, it doesn't seem to get any closer. Apparently women do this.
But the pride you feel when you finally stand there at Uhuru, having grafted through the night to get to that summit, is amazingly, amazingly special.
The woman that you saw in the film is or was until very recently, one of the trustees of the Exodus Travels Foundation. Krista Cullen is a double Olympian and won the gold medal with the British hockey team in 2012. So she is super strong and super fit, and you can just see, it's really hard, really tough work. I wanted to talk to you about the program that we've got, the Mountain Lioness Scholarship, as we heard so eloquently from Holly and Rebecca about the power of tourism as an industry, perhaps in many ways unique compared to so many other industries that are male dominated, that tourism really has the potential to contribute to greater gender equality and empowerment of women. I've just finished doing the results of our annual supplier survey and found that for Exodus trips last year, 35% of all our staff were women on our trips, on our adventures. But I also found that there were about 1 in 9 where there were no women employed on our trips at all. And we need to work to correct that as a business. But I think part of the improvement is first having the data to know where we are and where we need to really concentrate our efforts. So the case study I want to give you today is a program that we're supporting through the Exodus Travels Foundation, aiming in a very small way to close a gender gap that we've got among the guides working on Kilimanjaro. So Mount Kilimanjaro, as I'm sure many of you know, is the highest freestanding mountain in the world. And it's known as the roof of Africa. The climb is nearly 6,000 meters, and around 30 to 50,000 people every year attempt the climb. And because it's obviously so high and you do get altitude sickness on the way up, not everybody makes it, but there's a heck of a number of people trying, and therefore a number of people, guides, porters, cooks, etc., who are supporting those climbers on an annual basis. There was actually one of the first climbers was a woman back in 1909, a woman called Gertrude Bentham, and she made it alone to the roof of Africa. But even now, local women are still struggling to be recognized as their skills and trying to become professional porters and guides on the mountain. And a reason for this is that ancestral knowledge and bush skills have been passed down from generation to generation between men in Tanzania, but that has left a large gender divide when it comes to hiring porters and mountain guides. And as we heard from Holly, many of the women in communities in all parts of the world, but particularly around Kilimanjaro, they really struggle to stay afloat. High numbers of young single mothers and widows, and women have become heads of their households and solely in charge of taking care of their families. So a good job with a good income, like being an official guide, means that children can go to school and that they can provide this support for their families. As Krista said in the video that you saw, and I really encourage you to watch the full video. It's about 20 minutes long, and it tells this wonderful story about the porters and actually what is involved in taking this trek up the mountain. The word, just a bit of an aside, but the word for porter in Swahili is ngumu, but it actually translates as tough. And there's no other way to explain what these people are, but real tough. As I say, there just over 10 years ago, there were no real women on the mountain. And I think in the movie, Krista says there are about 18% now. That was a few years ago, so hopefully that will have increased. And numbers are increasing because of courageous female porters who are defying social stigmas to work alongside their male counterparts. The women who are tending to be guides do start as porters, and you can see how much they have to carry. But we know that in order to help them move up their career ladder, we needed to do something. So we were asking them what they wanted, and they wanted help to become guides. So in 2020, with the help of a local NGO, Robertson Outdoor Bursary, we launched the Mountain Lioness Scholarship to help these women get up the career ladder. And it was one of the first women-only guiding programs of its kind in Tanzania. The program is named after a woman called Lucy Kivoy, who really broke boundaries and was one of the first guides and really important at getting acceptance for the porters on the mountain. And you can see here that how important they see it and their role in leading and inspiring others. So Kitaba says she's a recent graduate of the program, that she hopes that she'll be seen as an inspiration to others and to encourage others to fulfill their dream. Here's another one of our guides. Our goal in 2020 was to have supported 30 women through guide training by the end of 2023. Now, the training itself is provided by the prestigious College of African Wildlife Management in the town of Mweka in the Kilimanjaro area. And the students take 5 modules: first aid, outdoor emergency care, wilderness rescue. They do mountain ecology. They identify mammals, and they learn tour guiding techniques. And at the end of their training, they take a test to become a guide. And in order to be able to climb on Kilimanjaro as a guide, you need to have this guide license as an absolute essential requirement. So as of December, or actually as of now, we supported 28 of the 30 women that we had set out to train. The further 2, the additional 2 to make that 30 will go through training in August this year. And our foundation has also committed to training an additional 5 women per year for each of the next 3 years. With the women that have graduated among these original 30, we're also funding a program that we're just calling Becoming Even Better. And this is where the women get further help on language and culture, first aid, and other mountain and tour group essentials. We're also making sure, because what we found is that of the 28 women that have been trained so far, we think there are 19 of them. We're just in trouble getting in contact with a couple, but 19 of them that we know of that are still working on the mountain. A few of them have left guiding because of family commitments. One we know moved to Zanzibar to work there. And we know that there are a few others who have been unable to secure employment. So in order to ensure that all women have a stronger chance of being fully employed when they finish their training, the Mountain Lioness program tries to select local women who have been previously serving as porters, not just obviously with Exodus, but with any of these companies that are taking people up the mountain, or somehow engaged in the Kilimanjaro mountaineering community with one of the companies in the area. We're also trying to make sure that we, within our own business, do well to ensure that women are gainfully employed. So we have female-only crew departures on a number of the dates, where we have 1 or 2 female guides and some cooks and female porters as well. And we've also made a promise that even not on a female departure, at least 4 women will be in part of the team supporting the climbers on every single trip that we offer up Kilimanjaro in Exodus. And hopefully in years to come, we can increase that even further. When women first started on the mountain, there was a lot of discrimination, and it was a lot of negative comments that male guides did not see that there was a role for the women here, and they thought that the women weren't strong enough, or that guiding was only for men. And I think now what they are starting to see is that there are a lot of customers out there who want to only be with women climbers, and they only want women guides, and specifically ask for women to be part of the team. And I think the men also are starting to see that women have a different approach, and I think Holly touched on this as well, that women have a different way of what were you saying, Holly, that you contribute to sort of better communication, I think is what we're all known for, and being able to tone down some arguments and things on the mountain. So I think these women really do provide a shining example to others of the communities around the base of Kilimanjaro, and really helping to pave the way for change when it comes to shifting the perspectives of gender equality in Tanzania. So thank you. Just some amazing pictures here of the women, because obviously laughing, dancing, and as Krista showed, noises is a real part of the camaraderie that takes place on the mountain.
We saw in the chat that a couple of people had done the walk. I think Marietta had done this climb 20 years ago, and she said there was only men back then. So it's wonderful to hear there's now some female mountain guides. How wonderful is that? So yeah, anybody else that's done this climb, let us know in the chat. We'd love to hear what your experience was. And it's really great to hear about these initiatives and these positive things that are moving the needle on gender equality within tourism and things like mountain guides and wildlife rangers. It's wonderful. So thank you so much, Rochelle, for sharing those inspiring stories from the front lines with us.
No, thank you for having me.
Hope you enjoyed learning about that. So we've learned about from the frontline inspiring stories from female rangers with Holly, and then we heard from Rochelle around the female mountain guides, the incredible project that Exodus are doing around that. But what about the action you and your business can take? Before our final guest, who you do not want to miss, because this lady is the missing piece that's going to help us bring this all together and bring us even more clarity on how we can better empower women through tourism. But just before that, very briefly, I truly believe most people are inherently good and want to do the right thing. But what we often see is this lack of understanding around sustainable and regenerative tourism. And whether we're talking about sustainability or whether we're talking about scuba diving, things we don't know, we often fear and then we avoid it. And what I've seen over the years is a lot of unconscious travel professionals, dumbfounded faces, questions around what sustainable travel is, what it means, and also who do we trust. And I often hear feelings of guilt for working in travel and tourism. And knowing that empowerment and engagement follow knowledge, I made it my mission to bring to the surface the tourism truths to as many souls as possible, expose the greenwashing that's going on, and help reinvigorate people's faith in travel as a force for good. So that's why I created an online community, a masterclass to try and help people through that. And you can find out more at kiwanotourism.com to be able to make a step towards more confidence, clarity, and feel more connected to a community of change makers. So, as I promised, we've now got our final guest, who is a huge inspiration to me and many others I know in the industry. She is an award-winning writer, editor, and speaker, and has been working at the intersection of sustainable travel, environmental conservation, and community-based advocacy efforts. JoAnna is the founder of Rooted Storytelling, a great resource and inspiration to so many. Her LinkedIn posts are definitely one to follow. She is here to open our minds and hearts to the power of storytelling. So, welcome, JoAnna.
There we go.
She's here. Woo!
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. Thanks for the invitation, Rebecca. I'm thrilled to have this conversation with you and kind of close up these really inspiring words and stories that we heard from both Holly and Rochelle today.
Yeah, there's so much to get in 1 hour, isn't there? That it feels like we're just skimming the surface a little bit. But hopefully people are feeling inspired by like what's happening out there. And like I said, we've heard from the front lines of, you know, female rangers with Holly and this incredible initiative with empowering more female mountain guides in Kilimanjaro with Rochelle. But like I said, you know, we've got a lot of business professionals, travel agents here today that I'm sure are keen to kind of bring this subject all together, but understand what they can do, what actions they can take. So what we're going to do, guys, is something a little bit different from the previous talks. Is me and JoAnna love a good chat. So we thought we'd have a nice chat and ask a couple of the questions that I know the community have asked. I certainly have these questions in my mind as well. And we would use this as a basis to kind of touch on this subject and learn more about sort of what you do, the power of storytelling, but how we as businesses can kind of show up and be better ambassadors for women. So if that sounds good to you, JoAnna, let's get started.
Yeah, absolutely.
There, as I mentioned a bit earlier, there's a lot of confusion still out there around sustainability, around a lot of misinformation, what's going on out there. But I'd love to ask you, even just for me, JoAnna, you know, let alone anybody else, how can storytelling resolve any of this confusion and bring more clarity to the sustainability jargon?
Well, I think this conversation today, this whole webinar has been a really great example of how we can use storytelling to talk about sustainability, because we tend to get caught up with this idea that sustainability is simply about the environment, but a sustainable world, a sustainable industry that we work in includes gender equality. It includes accessibility, preserving and protecting cultural heritage. So everything that we've been talking about today, the structures and systems and the programs in place to support women are an example of what sustainable tourism can look like. And yet we didn't hear the word sustainability once today. And the truth is that an increasing number of travelers want to support initiatives that are sustainable, that are responsible, that are supporting women, supporting marginalized communities around the globe. But those of us working in this industry kind of get caught up in the jargon, like we get caught up in the words. But it's not about the words. It's not about, your sustainability pledge or commitment or whatever. It's about what you're doing. It's about the actions that you're taking. And so I think what we saw today was a really good example of how we can step away from that jargon and really lean into thinking about what does sustainability really look like? Who are the people? Why does it matter? What is the impact? And that's really the story that we can be telling about our businesses, about our tourism ecosystem in general. We have an opportunity to quantify the impact of sustainability when we hear statistics like those that Holly shared, where when one female ranger is employed, they're supporting 16 additional members of their community or their family. That is the power of sustainability through tourism. So that's how we can talk about sustainability without getting caught up with, net zero, carbon neutral, eco resort, and all of these other things. So, I would say let's step back from the words and really show us what that action looks like. And that's where your really powerful stories come through.
For sure. I mean, we've been telling stories since like the beginning of time, right? So it's kind of going full circle, go back to that. And I love what you said there. We can get so bogged down and in all the jargon. It's kind of step away, give ourselves space, as you said, and that actually gives us the opening to kind of go back to what matters.
Yeah. I mean, when we hear these stories about the specific women, I love that Holly brought in very specific women's stories and what it means for them. That's what we connect with. We connect with people. We connect with stories. We connect with, a sense of belonging and wanting our kids to have access to education and, a community that we belong in. That those are the things that we can connect with on a very human level. It's not the data, the stats, or the jargon. And so, let's really lean into that aspect of ourselves that is innate and part of our human nature.
Absolutely. Now, I know a lot of people joining here today know that you are a wonderful storyteller, and I hang on every LinkedIn post that you that you share. But you've got so much experience in travel, in this industry, writing about this topic. I'm really keen to hear what's one of your favorite examples of how storytelling can engage travelers in this big picture thinking.
I like to say that we can be thinking about the global challenges that we're all facing by looking at local solutions. I consider myself a solutions advocate because I think that a lot of the I don't want to say answers, but the keys to unlocking and moving through the challenges that we're all facing, climate crisis, biodiversity collapse, political divisiveness, all these things that still exist when we travel are often being addressed by the change makers in the places that we visit. And so I think that when we can find examples of local change makers, social impact initiatives that illustrate how people are addressing global challenges when people are traveling, it's a really impactful way for people to connect things that they know about in their at-home lives related to the climate, related to water, food waste, whatever the case might be, with the destination that they're traveling to. They can see this global challenge in a very localized context. And I have seen examples of that. I wrote a story several years ago, I remember, about a tour operator that was working in Nepal and Thailand, and she was bringing travelers in who wanted to learn about and understand better what sex trafficking issues were happening in those countries. And they simply were bearing witness to what was happening. They were meeting the people on the ground who were addressing these kinds of challenges, why it was happening, who was involved, and you know, the complexities, the local complexities and nuances that were taking place on the ground. You know, it's one thing to hear about these things from a, you know, macro perspective, and it's another thing to meet the women who are involved with these things. And the ripple impacts of something like that were profound. She told me that years later, years after that trip, or those trips that she ran, that introduced people to this challenge, had started fundraisers for both the organizations and the women that they had met while they were traveling, but also in their home communities. They went back and learned about the challenges that were related to that in their home communities. They had started educational programs for young girls and women in their own cities and towns. And so, you know, looking at those local challenges, learning about how people are addressing that in the places where we visit as travelers, and then thinking about how that can be applied to the global challenges that we're all facing, I think is a really powerful and largely untapped opportunity for those of us who are working in tourism.
Agreed. What's the name of, is there a name for the example?
I don't know if the company is still in business. Like I said, it was several years ago, and last I checked, the woman I had spoken to for the article had moved to a different company. So I'm actually not sure if it's still in business.
But it doesn't make it any less so of a great example.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, it's just the way that the experience was delivered was a really impactful way to talk about this challenge with the local context. Yeah.
With the travelers. Yeah. So I'm keen to ask what key actions we can take as this community coming here together today that keeps coming on these kind of events. You know, just this wide community that really wants to keep showing up to make this industry better, to create change. What actions can we take as an industry to better empower more women from your experience, from where you stand, JoAnna?
Well, like I said, we have a lot of small businesses, social enterprises, impact initiatives, and active learning opportunities that can be introduced to travelers through the tourism context and their travel experiences. And when we go out of our way to make sure that we're intentionally supporting those businesses and initiatives that support women, that are owned by women, that address women's needs, then we are using tourism as a vehicle to support and empower women, whether they are specifically working in the tourism industry or not. It's really easy for us to fall back and to grab onto the stories and the experiences that we know of and we feel comfortable with in tourism. But as you've mentioned, Rebecca, a lot of, and Holly alluded to this too, a lot of the experiences that we know of in tourism, or the stories that we know of in tourism, have been written or shaped by men, and they continue to be centered around the experiences of men who are in leadership positions. And so in order to support women through our work, through our booking experiences as travelers ourselves, it sometimes means we need to go out of our way to find these things. We need to do the research. We need to make the connections so that we are able to find these initiatives, these women-owned businesses, etc. But we need to do that. We need to put in the work in order to make that happen. Because again, as Holly mentioned, somewhere around 80% any dollar that a woman earns when she works in tourism is going right back into her family, going right back into her community. I have heard that, and this is a statistic from the Clinton Foundation a few years back, so I don't know if this has changed, but this is in comparison to about 35% for men who are working in tourism, going back into the money going back into the community and their families. So the ripple effects are really powerful here. I just want to also encourage us to think beyond empowering women to providing access for women. We need to make sure women have access to conversations. They need to have access to decision-making spaces. They need to have access to capital in order to run their small businesses. They need access to promotional opportunities. So it's great that we can say we support women and we empower women, but we also need to make sure the avenues are open so that they have access to all of these things that they, need in order to have a fair shake working in this industry.
Yeah, that's huge. Thank you so much for mentioning that, JoAnna. Is not just about empowering, it's about giving this access and, taking that extra step to find those businesses owned and run by women and where women's voices are elevated. We have to be proactive. That doesn't just come to us. We have to take that extra effort to do that. So yeah, that's a really good point on access there.
Yeah.
So I'm conscious, guys, we are slightly over time. I'm sorry about that. We had some tech issues at the beginning, but it's all good. So we're going to keep going. We can stay another 5 minutes. You're going to want to hear these next few bits because this is really about the action you can take. So it's well worth staying on. So we've got travel agents, tour operators, journalists, all sorts here today. How can they, because we talked about an industry-wide, how can we be a bit more specific? Can we be more specific for them to help them become better ambassadors for women today in their business?
So I think there are a few things that we can do. The first is challenge the status quo, which I just referenced. Again, it's usually we lean into what's comfortable, it's what we know, but these practices in the past have not always benefited women, and in some ways they've actually harmed women. And when we're talking about intersectionality, marginalized women are the ones who have been on the losing end of this historically. So we need to challenge the status quo. We need to do the work to be better ambassadors for women, to ensure that we're supporting them through our work. In any of these roles, and as travelers ourselves, we should be asking hard questions of our operators, of the businesses that we support, of the accommodations that we're staying in, of anywhere that we're spending our money, because our money is a vote for what we want to see in the tourism industry. So be asking who is benefiting from this experience and why. We need to be thinking about how can we do better. I love that Rochelle was very clear about what Exodus's goals are. They're measurable, they're quantifiable, they know what they want to do, and importantly, they don't just put a number out there and walk away, and they own up to the fact that they haven't exactly met their goals, and they said, okay, this, we're not quite there yet. Here's what we're working on. That's it. That's a tour company that is transparent and accountable for the work they're doing. And as travelers, as travel agents, we have the right to ask those questions, and we have a responsibility to ask those questions. So, use your power as an influential person in tourism, but also as a traveler who makes decisions to ask those questions. I would encourage you to exert pressure on companies that don't have gender or DEI policies publicly stated, or that aren't transparent or haven't actively measured and shown improvement. We saw a lot of companies come forth in 2020 with DEI, commitments, and then a lot of them just fell off the radar. And we have seen some companies that have been very active in showing the work that they're doing, the ongoing work that they're doing, because this, like so many things in sustainability, is a journey. So we need to say to companies, this matters to us. The other thing I think is really important, for me personally, I think we have, we lift each other up when we work together versus, you know, pushing each other down, or what I like to say, a lot of people, a lot of companies like to call people out. I think there's power in calling people in. I think all of us, again, we exert influence, and we think about the resources and support that exist and the companies that possibly need to do better. You know, what can we do to share what we know so that we're all lifting together instead of shaming, blaming, canceling? I don't think any of that is moving the needle forward. I think we have great power and influence when we call in versus calling out.
I love that.
And, you know, and we can do that because this world is a stronger place when we all are lifted together. And that includes women, in marginalized communities.
I love that. Thank you, JoAnna, for sharing that. Yeah, Rochelle just messaged. I love that, calling people in. Agreed. Yeah, I've not heard that, so that's really, I've noted that down. You're absolutely right on all those points, and you're, you know, I really just wanted to pick up on very quickly, JoAnna, that you mentioned that, you know, Exodus, great example, mention clear, measurable stats, what they're doing, what they're working towards, but then transparency of if they don't meet it, or exactly what you mentioned there. It's just so that transparency and accountability, that's what it's about. And like we said, we're on a journey. It's not about perfectionism, but, you know, it's so refreshing when companies do that versus just shouting about this big thing over here, and then we hear nothing about it afterwards. So that was a really good one. So we're going to wrap this up with JoAnna. I could talk with JoAnna all day, but we're already over time, so we're going to have to wrap this up. I would love to sort of finish with JoAnna around, why do we need to rewrite tourism's narrative? Now, this question kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere, but it's something that I've heard you say before. And I just, you know, I know there's a lot of people here that might not identify as storytellers. But what could you tell us about tourism's current narrative, and maybe do we need to rewrite it? And if so, why?
Yeah, so first of all, welcome all of you. You're all storytellers. It's innately in you. It's a gift you have. So welcome. Every time we communicate, we're sharing some sort of story. And, you know, I alluded to this before, so I won't get too deep into it, but the way that we package tourism in the past really has been told through what we refer to as a dominant narrative. It's something that's been relaxing and comfortable and sanitized. It's been very palatable to people, specifically from the global north. You know, and I use that word kind of in air quotes because it's a questionable, problematic term, but it's for people of privilege. And what that means is that story has permeated the way that we think about travel, and it's caused a lot of harm. It's caused a lot of harm to the people who encounter travelers as they make their way around the world. It's caused a lot of harm to environment, communities as a whole, people who live in the places that people visit. And we are starting to see different ways to think about tourism. We're seeing it as an opportunity to support local communities. We're seeing it as a vehicle to provide financial support for women in marginalized communities. We're seeing it as a way to support conservation, cultural heritage. It's a way to support some social impact. Essentially, tourism doesn't have to be the center of the story. It can be the vehicle through which we support the holistic well-being of communities. And we can do that by thinking about the global challenges that we're all facing. We can do that by incorporating social impact, social initiatives, local businesses in our offerings and the way that we talk about tourism. And we can, all of us can do this in our communications on social media and our websites, the way that we're communicating with each other, with our travelers. We need to do this because the way tourism has existed in the past has been harmful to people. It's extracted resources. It's centered travelers above all else. It's done a lot of harm and created a lot of unrealistic expectations. And women have not been on the winning end of this. Marginalized communities and people have not been on the winning end of this narrative. But we can change that when we amplify the voices of people who have not historically been heard. We can change that by committing to centering experiences that encourage travelers to learn about issues like the climate crisis, sex trafficking, inequality of the borders, all of these issues that we have historically stepped back from in the past. We can turn this into an interesting story for our travelers to learn, to engage with, to support. And we need to do that because tourism as it has existed in the past is not sustainable. It's not something that we can keep doing. And we do have an opportunity to reinvent tourism and share a different story that is more empowering for everybody, that is more accessible, that is more interesting, quite frankly, and more sustainable for all of us working in this space.
Oh, wow. What an answer. Thank you. Where do I begin? Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, JoAnna, for sharing your wisdom, knowledge, and just planting seeds, I hope, in people's minds here that have stayed on to think that they're storytellers too. We're all storytellers. Yeah. You don't have to be some professional writer title to be one. And as JoAnna said, the experiences you talk about, the tourism experiences you sell, whatever way you engage within tourism with your business, you can tell these stories that need to be told to be able to rewrite tourism's narrative. And that's what we need to be doing together. So thank you, JoAnna. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the invitation. And thank you for such a fantastic webinar today, Rebecca. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, I just wish we had longer. All right, guys. So we're going to wrap things up here really quickly. I'm going to share 3 key actions with you. But before I do that, I want to create a word waterfall before you all drop off. So simply add in the live chat just one word which summarizes how you feel after this hour together. There's no right or wrong answer. Just add one word about how you feel after hearing from Holly, from hearing from Rochelle and the Exodus Foundation and the Lioness incredible story, as well as from JoAnna, and helping us to feel where do we go from here, from all this information as travel and tourism professionals. So add those words. Let's create a word waterfall together. So what now? Check your inbox for your email. In there's going to be some useful links from today and the codes from the water bottle, so water to go, as well as some other bits and pieces. So all the useful links, as well as the stats that you guys have been requesting that you heard today, they will all be in your email. So do look out for that. Sign up for the Kiwano Tourism e-newsletter on the website if you're not already part of that, because that's the only place that you'll hear about the next free educational event. And make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel if you're not already, or follow me on Instagram. Why? Because I'm just about to release another one of my behind the scenes videos from Spain. So that's a great way to see on there. Thank you once again to all the incredible speakers that we had. I love all of you guys. You're amazing. And thank you. Big love to everybody that took an hour today and all their time, precious time, to be here with us to learn more about empowering women through tourism. And we've got this lovely word waterfall going on. Thank you so much. We've got Martina saying she's inspired, Julie saying she's inspired, Emma saying she's grateful, Rachel's given us a lovely emoji, Joyce has said encouraged. I love that. Ewan said thoughtful, Marietta said optimistic, Emma Summers, blown away. I think that's 2 words, but we'll let you off. Ellie said inspired. Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys, for this wonderful waterfall. It's wonderful to see that. Thank you so much to being here, and I hope to see you next time. So keep an eye out for that email with all the useful stats and everything that we've spoken about today with all the links. Thank you once again to Holly, Budge, and JoAnna and Rochelle, and obviously Exodus Adventure Travels, who help make this event possible. Thank you so much.